You ever feel like the world is trying to convince you that your voice doesn't matter, that you're too small, too ordinary, too loud, too angry, too young, too whatever to change anything? Yeah, I felt that too. There's this unspoken message everywhere. Just accept it. This is the way it's always been. And sometimes when you look at how deep the problems run, injustice, inequality, silence dressed up as peace, it's tempting to believe it. It's tempting to shrink, to wait, to hope someone braver shows up, someone smarter, someone more powerful. But what if that someone is you? What if all the noise around you telling you to sit down and stay quiet is really just fear? Fear of what happens when you finally decide to stand up. Because here's the thing, systems don't break themselves. Injustice doesn't correct itself. Silence doesn't heal anything. The truth is, change never asks for permission. It kicks the door in and says, we're not doing this anymore. So if you're waiting for the perfect moment to start fighting for change, let me break it to you. There is no perfect moment. There is only this one right here, right now. And whether you feel ready or not, history is already watching. The question is, what are you going to do about it? You can't change what you're too scared to look at. That's just the truth. You can't fix a problem if you keep pretending it's not there. You can't break chains if you're still calling them jewelry. And we do it all the time. We dress up dysfunction. We sanitize suffering. We normalize injustice so we don't have to confront the discomfort of admitting that something is deeply broken. But let me say this as plainly as I can. The things we are afraid to face are the very things holding us hostage. You see it in people, in families, in systems, in entire countries. Folks walking around with wounds they've never named, carrying trauma like luggage they forgot they were holding. Generations passing down silence like it's wisdom, power structures hiding behind laws and titles and respectability, hoping you'll be too polite or too exhausted to call them out. But if you don't confront a lie, it gets comfortable. If you don't shine a light, darkness will settle in and make itself at home. And what starts as injustice becomes a culture, a routine, a structure that people are too afraid to question. That's how oppression works. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it wears a suit and speaks in legislation and policies. Sometimes it looks like tradition. And if you're not paying attention, if you're not willing to confront it, you'll start defending it. You'll start saying things like, that's just how it is, or that's not my business, or it's always been this way. But just because something has always been a certain way doesn't make it right. Abuse doesn't become acceptable just because it's familiar. Corruption doesn't get a pass just because it's wrapped in protocol. At some point, somebody has to stand up and say, enough. Not because it's easy, not because it's safe, but because it's necessary. And let me be real with you, confronting what's wrong isn't glamorous. It won't make you popular. You're not going to get a standing ovation for telling the truth. In fact, you might get silence. You might get pushback. You might lose people. You might lose access. You might get labeled as difficult, angry, too much. But guess what? That label they're trying to give you, too much, is often just a distraction, a tool to get you to sit down when you were born to stand up. So what are you willing to confront? Are you willing to call out racism when it's dressed up as policy? Are you willing to speak on poverty when it's swept under the rug of personal responsibility? Are you willing to challenge sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, even when it's coming from the people closest to you? Or are you going to keep pretending everything's fine because silence feels more comfortable than truth? Let me tell you something. Comfort is a trap. They'll sell you comfort to keep you quiet. They'll tell you to stay in your lane, to be grateful, to not rock the boat. But some of us were never meant to ride that boat. Some of us were born to build a new one. And here's the kicker. Change doesn't require perfection. You don't need a degree in political science to know when something is wrong. You don't need permission to call injustice what it is. You don't need a title to stand in your truth. What you need is courage, the kind of courage that doesn't wait for consensus, the kind of courage that doesn't need a microphone or a stage, just a conviction that says, I refuse to pretend I don't see this. Because when we stop confronting the truth, we stop growing. And when we stop growing, we stop moving. And that's exactly what oppressive systems want. They want you tired. They want you numb. They want you silent. But silence is not safety, it's surrender. You were not built to surrender. You were built to disrupt. You were built to challenge. You were built to rise. And every time you open your mouth and speak the truth, even if your voice shakes, even if your knees wobble, you break a little piece of that system that depends on your silence. And some people will say, you're making things political. No, I'm making them visible. There's a difference. And if visibility makes you uncomfortable, then maybe it's time to ask yourself why you were so comfortable with invisibility. Fighting for change starts with honesty, not the sugar-coated kind, not the social media version, the real kind, the kind that burns a little, the kind that makes you look in the mirror and say, we're not doing this anymore. The kind that doesn't just feel good, it does good. Because that's what change is, not a trend, not a hashtag, not a speech that sounds good on a stage. Real change is confrontation. Real change is messy. Real change is uncomfortable, but it is also powerful. And once you really start, there's no going back. You start to see everything differently. You start to question everything you were told to accept. And you start to understand that your silence was never neutral. It was compliance. And so the first step in fighting for change isn't marching or voting or organizing. Those are all critical, but they come later. The first step is telling the truth, the real, raw, unfiltered truth about what's broken and why it's still broken and what it's going to take to make it right. And when you get there, when you stop running, stop hiding, stop explaining away injustice, that's when you unlock power. Not just the kind that shakes buildings, but the kind that transforms hearts, minds, communities. The kind that says we see it, we name it, we confront it, and we will not back down. We live in a world that's constantly selling you the idea that change is somebody else's job. Turn on the TV, you'll hear the government needs to fix it. Scroll through social media, you'll see if only we had better leaders. Sit in a meeting, in a classroom, in a church, and you'll hear it again and again. Somebody needs to do something. But here's what they don't tell you. You are that somebody. It's not some superhero. It's not the next election. It's not a magical moment where all the stars line up and suddenly justice falls from the sky. Change starts when people like you, people who are tired, people who are overlooked, people who've been underestimated decide they're done waiting. And I know it sounds simple, maybe too simple. You might be sitting there thinking, who am I to be the change? I'm just one person. I don't have money. I don't have a platform. I've made mistakes. I've been knocked down. I'm still figuring things out. Good. Because that's exactly who change chooses. Not the polished, not the perfect, not the ones who never struggled. Change chooses the ones who've been through something, the ones who know what it feels like to be dismissed, ignored, pushed to the margins, the ones who carry stories in their scars and power in their pain, the ones who've seen too much to stay quiet and love too deeply to walk away. You see, waiting for someone else to show up is easy. It lets you off the hook. It gives you an excuse to stay comfortable, stay small, stay hidden. But comfort is a liar. It whispers you're not ready. It says you don't know enough. It tells you to sit back while the world keeps turning. But here's the truth. Readiness is a myth. Nobody ever feels ready. Nobody wakes up one day fully prepared to challenge a system, to take a stand, to lead a movement. People don't become leaders and then decide to act. They act, and in the process, they become leaders. So if you're waiting for the fear to disappear before you speak up, you'll be silent forever. If you're waiting for everyone to support you before you step out, you'll be stuck in place for the rest of your life. And if you're waiting for change to come from someone with more power, more status, more influence, ask yourself, why not you? Why can't you be the one who starts the conversation in your family, in your school, in your workplace? Why can't you be the one who runs for office, who challenges that policy, who stands up in a room full of silence and says, this isn't right? You are not too small to make a difference. That idea, that's propaganda. That's what systems tell you when they want you to stay in your place. But let me tell you something, you have more power than you realize. You have a voice, you have lived experience, you have the ability to move people, to shift atmospheres, to push things forward, even if it's just an inch at a time. And inch by inch, step by step, voice by voice, movements are born. And I'm not saying it's easy. No, change is heavy. It's slow. It's often thankless, but it's also holy. It's transformative. It's the kind of work that echoes far beyond your own lifetime. You might think, I don't have a title, I don't have a microphone, but listen, you don't need a title to do what's right. You don't need permission to start. You can be the person who challenges injustice in your own backyard. You can be the one who calls out bias in that meeting. You can be the one who refuses to laugh at that joke because you know it's rooted in hate. You can be the one who mentors someone younger, who lifts someone up, who says, I've got you when the world is trying to tear them down. That's change. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's behind the scenes, but it's real. It matters and it builds. But you won't get there until you stop waiting for someone else to validate you. You are enough. You are ready. You are capable right now as you are. Don't let fear trick you into thinking you need to be perfect before you begin. Don't let insecurity convince you that someone else can do it better. And don't let the weight of the world keep you frozen in place. The fight for change doesn't begin with protests or policies. It begins with a decision that says, I'm not going to sit this one out. A decision that says, I may be scared, but I'm stepping forward anyway. A decision that says, I don't have all the answers, but I've got questions and I'm going to ask. It's your fight. It's your voice. It's your time. Every generation waits for a leader. But what if the leader we're waiting for is you? The moment you stop outsourcing your power, the moment you decide to own your influence, that's when things begin to shift. That's when you move from watching history to shaping it. And you won't always see the results right away. Some of the seeds you plant today might not bloom until long after you're gone. But plant them anyway. Speak anyway. Act anyway. Because someone somewhere is watching you and thinking, if they can do it, maybe I can too. That's the ripple. That's the revolution. And it starts with you. Let's be real for a moment. We love to talk about change like it's some feel-good moment, like it's inspirational music swelling in the background while everything suddenly shifts and justice rains down like confetti. But that's not what real change feels like. Real change doesn't come dressed in applause. It comes wrapped in resistance, in sacrifice, in loneliness, in moments where you wonder if speaking up was even worth it. Moments where your courage costs you more than you expected. That's the part nobody puts on the posters. That's the part they don't teach in schools or show in the highlight reels. Because real change, it's heavy. The moment you decide to challenge what's wrong, the moment you decide to speak truth to power, to reject the silence, to push against systems designed to stay exactly as they are, something shifts and not always in your favor. People start to look at you differently. Some step back, some start whispering, some just disappear. You'll lose things, sometimes people, sometimes opportunities, sometimes people. You'll be the one who no longer gets invited to the table. Not because you don't belong there, but because your presence makes the conversation uncomfortable. Because you ask questions that don't have easy answers. Because you don't play along. You'll be called difficult, angry, emotional, radical, and those words won't always come from your enemies. Sometimes they come from people you love, people you thought were with you until they saw just how far you were willing to go for what's right. And that's where the loneliness creeps in. You'll feel it on the nights when your phone stops ringing. You'll feel it when your courage is met with silence. You'll feel it when you look around and realize that the path you chose doesn't come with a crowd. Because people love the idea of change until it costs them something. They'll cheer you on from a distance as long as your fight doesn't mess with their comfort, as long as your truth doesn't challenge their worldview, as long as your progress doesn't require their participation. But change is not a performance. It's a decision. And that decision will make you stand out, even when you didn't ask to. Let's be even more honest. Sometimes it's going to hurt. It hurts when you're doing the right thing and still feel punished for it. It hurts when you're sacrificing your comfort, your reputation, your time just to move the needle a little forward while others sit back and benefit from the fight you're in. It hurts when you're standing up and all you hear behind you is silence. But here's the thing, just because it's hard doesn't mean it's wrong. Discomfort is not a sign to stop. Resistance is not a warning to turn back. In fact, if you're not facing resistance, you might not be pushing hard enough. Change demands something from you. It always has. It's never been free. Look at every movement that has ever made history, every voice that shifted culture, every leader that challenged injustice. They all paid a price. They were mocked, ignored, threatened, and arrested. Some were beaten. Some were killed. Some never lived to see the change they fought for, but they fought anyway. Because they understood something too many people forget. Justice isn't about recognition. It's about responsibility. You don't fight because you want to be seen. You fight because it's the right thing to do, even when no one's clapping. And listen, I know it's tempting to think, why should I put myself through all that? Why speak up when silence would be easier? Why push back when you could play it safe? Why lose friends, burn bridges, miss opportunities just to speak a truth most people don't even want to hear? Because your silence has a cost too. And it might not feel heavy today, but one day it will. One day you'll look back and wonder what would have happened if you had said something, if you had stood up, if you had dared to make yourself uncomfortable for the sake of someone else's freedom. Because that's what this is really about. Not ego, not pride, not proving a point. It's about people. It's about legacy. It's about breaking the cycles that broke the people who came before you. And yes, the cost is high, but so is the impact. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you give someone else permission to do the same. Every time you speak truth, even if your voice shakes, you make it easier for the next person to speak theirs. Every time you stand alone, you build a path for someone else to follow. Change might make you lonely for a season, but it will never leave you empty. It will grow you. It will stretch you. It will wake something up in you that the world tried to silence. You'll find strength you didn't know you had, clarity you didn't know you needed, and community, not always large, not always loud, but real. You'll find the ones who see you, the ones who get it, the ones who are fighting too, maybe not beside you, but with the same fire in their chest. And in that space, even the loneliness becomes holy. Even the sacrifice becomes sacred. So yes, the cost of change is real, but it is always worth it, because the only thing more painful than speaking up is living in a world where no one ever does. There's a moment after the shouting dies down, after the signs are put away, after the hashtags stop trending. That's when the real work begins. Protest is necessary. Let's be clear about that. Protest is the fire alarm, the warning, the cry, the declaration that something is broken and we will not be silent about it. Protest is energy. It's emotion. It's people saying, you will hear us, even if you keep trying not to. It shakes the room. It disturbs the peace that was built on silence. But protest on its own is not enough. Because once you've gotten their attention, what now? What happens after the cameras leave? After the crowd goes home? After the world, so used to short attention spans, moves on to the next story? That's when we need structure. That's when we need strategy. That's when the movement has to grow from noise into a mechanism for real sustained transformation. Change isn't just a feeling. It's a framework. It's not just showing up in the streets. It's showing up in school boards, in courtrooms, in city councils, in legislative chambers. It's knowing how power works and being willing to not just challenge it, but wield it. Because the system, it never sleeps, is moving with or without your outrage. Laws are still being written. Budgets are still being passed. Decisions are still being made that will shape entire communities for generations. And if we're not there, if we're not present, involved, prepared, guess who still wins? We can't afford to be emotional without being organized. We can't afford to be loud without being legal. We can't afford to be powerful in protest, but passive in policy. That's how they beat us. Not because we weren't passionate, but because we weren't prepared to play the long game. Movements die when they don't evolve. Anger is a spark, but if it's not directed into something strategic, it burns out. Real change demands more than emotion. It demands education. It demands endurance. It demands we know not just what we're against, but what we're for. You want better laws? Learn how legislation works. You want equity in housing, healthcare, education? Then study how those systems are funded, who controls those budgets, what board you can get on, and what policies need to be dismantled or rewritten entirely. You want to defund injustice? Then fund justice. Show up to budget meetings, join advisory boards, ask questions no one's asking, run for office if no one's representing your voice. Be in the rooms where decisions are made. And if you're not allowed in, build your own room and make it louder. Because if we keep waiting for the system to fix itself, we'll be waiting forever. Policy is power. It decides who gets access and who gets left out. It determines whose stories get protected and whose lives get forgotten. It's in the zoning laws. It's in the sentencing guidelines. It's in the school curriculums and the healthcare policies, in the environmental codes. It's in places most people never look, and that's exactly why the system stays the same. We've got to be more than emotional. We've got to be intentional. That doesn't mean we stop protesting. It means we know what the protest is for. It means we move with a plan. It means we pair passion with precision. And let me be honest, policy isn't sexy. It's not viral. It doesn't always feel like a revolution. Sometimes it's long meetings. Sometimes it's research. Sometimes it's hours spent reading dense documents and decoding political language meant to confuse and discourage you. But that's the work. That's the revolution most people overlook, because policy is where change becomes permanent. Marching gets attention. Policy changes lives. Hashtags raise awareness. Policy raises standards. And if we want this generation's movement to outlive the headlines, if we want this moment to turn into a milestone, we have to build something that lasts. That means mentoring the next leaders. That means teaching our communities how systems work, how voting works, how organizing works, not just for protest, but for policy shifts. That means creating pipelines from grassroots to government, from lived experience to legislative action, from pain to policy. So don't just rage, organize. Don't just chant challenge. Don't just resist, rebuild. And when they tell you it's too complicated, remind them everything is complicated when they don't want you to understand it. That doesn't mean you back down. That means you double down. You dig deeper. You learn the language. You build the table. You bring your people with you. Because we're not just here to make noise. We're here to make laws. We're here to make schools safer, to make hospitals more just, to make courts more fair, to make neighborhoods more livable, to make opportunity more accessible. We are not just reacting to injustice. We are redesigning justice. And it will not happen overnight. It won't happen in one protest or one election or one fiery speech. It happens brick by brick, vote by vote, law by law. It happens when we build coalitions, when we demand accountability, when we stay the course, even when it's slow, even when it's quiet, even when it's hard. Because movements don't fail when they run out of passion. They fail when they run out of planning. So let's be clear. Protest will always have its place. But without policy, it's only half the fight. We didn't come all this way to stop at the steps. We're walking through the doors. We're taking our seats and we're writing the rules. Not just for us, but for everyone who comes after us. This is how we turn the moment into a movement and the movement into a legacy. Every fight for change, every battle fought on streets or in courtrooms, every voice raised in protest or whispered in quiet determination, it's not just for today. It's not just for the here and now. It's for the generations that come after us. The ones who will walk the path we forge, the ones who will inherit the world we leave behind. And make no mistake, the legacy you leave behind matters. It's everything. You might be wondering, what difference does my story make? I'm not famous. I'm not powerful. Who's going to remember what I did? But legacy isn't about fame or fortune. It's not about being on a monument or in a history book. It's about being proof. Proof that change is possible. Proof that the system can be challenged. Proof that the next generation doesn't have to settle for the way things are because you stood up and said no more. You see, every moment you choose courage over comfort, every time you speak truth when it's easier to stay silent, every instance you choose to fight, you become a living testimony to the power of one. You become the evidence for someone who comes after you, someone who might be struggling in silence, someone who feels like giving up, someone who wonders if their voice matters. And in that moment, your legacy becomes their light. Maybe you won't see it yourself. Maybe your fight won't make headlines. Maybe the world will move on before the change you sparked takes root. But the seeds you plant, they will grow. They'll grow in the hearts of young people who hear your story and say, if they could do it, then maybe I can too. They'll grow in communities that learn to organize, to stand together, to demand. They'll grow in laws that are written because you refuse to be ignored. That's how legacy works. It's a relay race, a passing of the torch from those who came before to those who come after. And what you do today matters because you are the link between the past and the future. You're the proof that change doesn't just happen, it's made. But here's the thing about legacy. It's not just about the big things. It's not only about speeches and protests and laws. Sometimes legacy is in the little moments, the conversations you have with your children about justice and dignity. Example you set by standing up to injustice in everyday life. The kindness you show to someone who's struggling. The courage you demonstrate when it would be easier to walk away. Legacy is found in consistency. Legacy is found in showing up again and again, even when the fight feels endless. And legacy is also about owning your story, not pretending your journey has been perfect or easy, but telling it anyway. Because your story, your truth is powerful. It is a beacon for someone else's healing. It is a roadmap for someone else's courage. And no matter how broken you feel, no matter how much the system tries to silence you, your voice matters. Your fight matters. Your legacy matters. You might think you're just one person, but one person with a purpose is unstoppable. Think about those who came before us, the ones who endured unspeakable pain, who faced violence and hatred, who risked everything so we wouldn't have to fight the same battles in the same way. They didn't do it for applause. They did it because they believed in a future where their children, their children's children could live with dignity and justice. And now it's your turn. What kind of legacy do you want to leave? Will you be the reason someone believes in change? The reason someone finds hope? The reason someone fights just a little harder? Or will you let fear silence you? Let exhaustion hold you back? Let the weight of the world convince you that your actions don't matter? Here's the truth. Your legacy is already being written. Every choice you make, every stand you take, every moment you decide to show up for justice is a page in that. So make it one worth reading. Be somebody's proof that change is possible. Be the living testament that courage outlasts fear. Be the example that the fight for justice is a fight worth having. Because at the end of the day, when the noise fades and the crowds are gone, what remains is the impact you made on the people around you, the lives you touched, the barriers you broke, the love you gave, the truth you told. And that, my friend, is a legacy no one can take from you. So stand tall, keep pushing, keep fighting. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who will follow. Be somebody's proof. Change is not a distant dream reserved for the few. It is the responsibility of each and every one of us right here, right now. You are not a bystander in history. You are a participant, a warrior, a builder of the future. The fight for justice, for equity, for truth. It begins with you. So stand firm in your purpose, speak boldly with your voice, and act relentlessly with your heart. Because the world isn't waiting for a perfect hero. It's waiting for you, imperfect, powerful, unshakable. Remember this. The legacy of change doesn't belong to those who wait for permission. It belongs to those who refuse to stay silent. It belongs to those who dare to be somebody's proof. So go out and be that proof. The world needs you now more than ever.